So it's no surprise to most people that the world of USB or Universal Serial Bus has been expanding and changing over the past few years, and it's gotten pretty complicated. So in order to shed some light on this, I'm going to go over the different revisions, versions, and major connector types that are out there. Now don't get me wrong, USB is a super convenient way to connect devices because, as the name suggests, it is universal. However, the USB Implementers Forum has taken to renaming and inventing new names for already existing generation USB revisions. So let's talk about USB from the top. In the beginning, there was only darknet. Oh wait, we're talking about USB. At the beginning of the life of USB, there was only USB Type A, which most of you are probably really accustomed to seeing. The first version of USB was USB 1.0. This had a max theoretical speed of 12 megabits per second. Then, a few years later, along came USB 1.1, a slightly revised version of its older brother. A couple of years after that, USB 2.0 came along. It makes sense that they named it 2.0 instead of 1.2 because this had a theoretical max data transfer speed of 480 megabits per second, 40 times the speed of USB 1.1. Also, it's worth mentioning that at this point, the USB-IF added micro USB as a subconnector of USB 2. Then we got USB 3.0. Again, makes sense, it had a theoretical max of 5 gigabits per second, nearly 10.5 times that of USB 2. USB 3.0 actually added 2 more pairs of data wires, totaling to 6 data wires to achieve the faster speeds. So let's continue on this bus of USB's journey. Wink wink. USB 3.1 comes along, and it's similar to USB 3 except it has a theoretical max of 10 gigabits per second. Also, bits is not the same as bytes. There's 8 bits in a byte, so for those of you who don't know, bits and bytes are not the same thing. Anyway, it seems like everything's all fine and dandy. There are only 5 reasonably named major versions. Well, this is where things start to go awry. You see, instead of leaving the name of the 5 gigabit USB version in place, they instead replaced that with USB 3.1 Gen 1 and called the 10 gigabit USB version USB 3.1 Gen 2. Alright, I can remember that. That's a simple change. Then along came USB 3.2 20 gigabit per second, or so we thought. Instead of calling the new standard something sensible like USB 4 to refresh everything and apologize for the illogical naming, they called it USB 3.2 Gen 2 by 2. Why? The by 2 stipulates 2 lanes for data transfer instead of just 1. Then, because of this new revision, they felt it was upon them to rename the original USB 3 to USB 3.2 Gen 1 and rename the 10 gigabit version of USB 3 to USB 3.2 Gen 2. But now's not the time to get mad at the forum, so let's review. USB 1.0 and 1.1 are obsolete, we don't need to talk about that. USB 2 hasn't had any major changes made to it, and USB 3 5GB got renamed to USB 3.2 Gen 1 when the USB 3 20GB version came out, as well as the USB 3 10GB getting renamed to USB 3.2 Gen 2. So, to try and rectify this mess, they called all the 5GB USB versions Super Speed USB, all the 10GB USB versions Super Speed USB 10 gigabits per second, and the USB 20GB version Super Speed USB 20 gigabits per second. But wait, there's more! There's also USB Type-C and Thunderbolt. What about those? Well, all the little features and versions are not within the scope of this video, but I will briefly go over some of the features of some of the revisions of USB-C and Thunderbolt. There's a common misconception that just because something uses the USB-C standard, it's automatically faster than its USB Type-A counterpart. This is mostly true, but USB 2.0 Type-C is not so different from USB 2.0 Type-A. It's just a physical difference, but it can be reversible, and it's also a little smaller. The features like power delivery and DisplayPort over USB-C are only available on fully featured USB 3.1 Type-C connectors and newer. Generally speaking, USB Type-C jacks are much more durable, and what's more is that they can replace the 3.5mm audio jack standard, most DC charger barrel plugs, DisplayPort and HDMI, as well as the USB Type-A plugs and all its subconnectors. The last standard to mention is Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt 3 and newer actually use the USB-C connector, and it's generally backwards compatible with all of the older model USB-C versions. There are some devices that are only compatible with Thunderbolt, however. A little more about Thunderbolt. The most recent revision was announced at CES in July this past year by Intel, and that is Thunderbolt 4. Thunderbolt 4 can drive up to 2 4K displays and audio instead of just one like its predecessor, Thunderbolt 3, so long as the cable you use is USB 4 Gen 3 certified. That's right, another name for you to remember. And it can also drive one 8K display. So Thunderbolt 3 and 4, like USB 3.1 Type-C, can replace a lot of the aforementioned connectors, but they also boast speeds of up to 40 gigabits per second, which is 5 gigabytes per second, which is insanely fast. However, Thunderbolt 4 requires a PCIe bandwidth of 32 gigabits per second as opposed to 16 gigabits per second on Thunderbolt 3. This should theoretically grant external PCIe devices more speed because of the wider bandwidth. Now, an interesting tidbit for the next time you get into a conversation about USB, for the 2020 MacBooks, while 2 of the ports are technically Thunderbolt 3, they're also marketed as USB 4 cross-compatible with Thunderbolt 3. Just thought I would mention that cool, awesome piece of information. So here's a chart of all of the connectors and versions I've covered, and let's be real, negatively ranted and raved about. Hopefully next time they can stick with a simple naming scheme as SATA has. They have, Rev 1, Rev 2, anyway. By the way, make sure you're subscribed, because I'm going to be making a video soon about SATA drives and drives in general. So, other than that, you know the drill. Dislike it if you didn't like it, like and subscribe if you did, and comment any tech stuff you want explained. Ooh, also, what do you want these tech-splaining videos to be called? Ooh, tech-splaining, that's pretty good.